All right, here we go. So, welcome to the space, guys. This is my first one. Sorry if it's a little clunky. This is something we're going to start doing. Aaron can't make it here tonight because he has some friends in from out of town. So, this is more of a trial run. And Maureen Richmond, she's an astrologer, and she has been sharing some incredible information with me about what she's been noticing and monitoring and following regarding this drone invasion and everything that's happening with it right now. And she has a very unique perspective, and astrologically she can help us understand what's going on here in the bigger picture. And we will be opening this up for questions and allowing this to be interactive. So if anybody wants to request to speak, we will let you in, and eventually we will get to some questions. But we're going to let Maureen kind of kick it off and let her give her opinion on what she thinks is happening right now, because I mean, there's a million different theories right now, and if there's no lack of confusion, as we know. So, welcome, Maureen. How's it going?
Well, thank you so kindly, Tyler. I'm honored to be here with you. I appreciate having this platform to speak with our brothers and sisters out there who are as concerned as you and I and Lily are about getting at the truth and trying to have a deeper understanding of what the process is for our planet right now. So thank you so kindly. I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, there are many astrological influences that are relevant to what we're looking at here. As Tyler just said, the speculations about what is causing these multiple anomalous sightings all at one time are running totally rampant. There are, probably 10 theories that appear on the internet every minute about what's causing this. The position that I will take is to honor everybody's voice. I think we all have something to contribute to this. So I'm not in any kind of hard and fast, concretized position about what absolutely is going on here. I think our primary guides should be the voices on the people on the ground who are actually experiencing these things. We should honor them and listen to them, listen to their experience. These people are located in New Jersey, now New York State, also the state of Philadelphia, and I just happened to see a post by Luis Elizondo that says Virginia and California are also now being affected. I don't know to the exact extent. That's a question that we can look at. And I had a private communication on Facebook today that told me that in Minnesota, something is going on in the area of North Ridge, Minnesota. The claim in all these cases is that what people are seeing is either drones or drone-like objects. We need to get good descriptions on exactly what people are seeing so that we can have an intelligent discussion about this. And that's something that perhaps we'll all return to in just a few moments. But Tyler's asked me about the astrological influences that we have here. Number one, I would like to address the often unstated fears, concerns that are in the back of people's minds as to whether we're looking at some type of terrible planetary disaster, World War III, or other type of societal and economic collapse. And my answer to that would be, I do not expect that. Now, there have been times astrologically on our planet that did conduce to things like that. In other words, did lead to or encourage or allow for or set the scene for astrologically and energetically for those things to happen. And we can point to World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, which preceded World War II, so I should say World War I, the stock market crash and the Great Depression of the late 20s, and moving on into the Great Depression in the 30s, World War II, the appearance of nuclear weaponry, the exploding of nuclear weapons over Nagasaki and Hiroshima, as just a few of the disastrous things that we do not want to see occur or anything like them ever happen again. We're in a distinctly different period of time astrologically, and the reason is not to be found in popular discussions of astrology. It's to be found in what are called planetary pair cycles. These are long long periods of time, like 500 years long, 172 years long, things of that nature, not real short-term astrological influences. There are many important short-term astrological influences that are affecting all of us and that we all react to. So they're in the picture all the time, but it's these long-term background influences that generate major social, planetary, economic, and financial trends and world health trends all over the planet. Background, major cyclic influences. And these are the Neptune-Pluto cycle. And that's the period of time that intervenes between a time when these two planets are seen from the Earth, more or less lined up, therefore in the same place in the zodiac. That's a conjunction. It takes 494 years for Neptune to separate from Pluto and move all the way around as Pluto itself is moving through the zodiac and catch up again with it and make another conjunction. So that's about 500 years. The key to these cycles is as follows. The time between the conjunction and the opposition, which is with one planet on one side of the Earth and the other on the other side of the Earth, is the time of expansion of all human endeavors. The other half of that cycle begets the contraction of human efforts. So there's a very different set of material circumstances that we experience on the Earth, depending on where any of these cycles are. The current Neptune-Pluto cycle is in the opening phase, that is between the conjunction and the opposition, and that's the expansion phase. So we're in the expansion phase of the Neptune-Pluto cycle. That's been the case since 1891 and will continue through 2140. We don't have anything to worry about there.
So let me ask you, as far as, okay, so you don't think it's going to be some planetary financial collapse? I mean, whatever kind of economic collapse, I guess you could say. I think we're experiencing a transition. That's apparent, but it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not a doomsday event. And
Right.
so let's jump right into why you think this started 10 days after Trump was elected, right after the election day, and the whole Hamas thing and what you sent me. And let's just hit the ground running from there.
Certainly. For probably most of your listeners tonight have paid some attention at least, or are pretty well aware of Trump's interests and what he talks about, So he has made a real point out of emphasizing his respect for Judaism and for the state of Israel. And so that's where his affinities lie. And he's even got ties to the Jewish community in his own blood-related family. His daughter is married, his daughter converted to Judaism in the years before his first presidential term and married into a Jewish family. And so she is a converted Jewess. And so, his family ties are very strong to Judaism, and that's going to stay in the picture. Everybody will remember that the election was won by Trump on November 5, and then I believe the election was called formally on July the 6th. Of course, November the 6th. Of course, there's another happening in January that Congress has to do to certify all that. But that was a period of time when it was clear that Trump was going to be the next president of the United States. Well, about 10 days later, not even 10 days later, the Trump properties in New Jersey and Florida both were overflown by these unidentified drones. That's not very much time in between his election. Now, in between the election and the drones, he made a really powerful statement. You know about this statement, don't you, Tyler? You heard about this statement, didn't you?
Yeah, I have, and yeah, we talked about it on Messenger. But let the audience know if they don't know.
Right. I will happily do that Trump issued a public statement to the world. It was really addressed to Hamas, and it said that if Hamas does not give up the hostages that it's holding currently, the United States would take terrific retaliation on Hamas for that fact. Well, Hamas is holding Jewish citizens of Israel currently as hostages from the October War and other things, I believe. So they've got some citizens of Israel in their control. So who's he talking about? What hostages is he talking about? At least those. I think Hamas may also have some Americans from that same period. But they've certainly got some Israeli citizens. So when Trump says that he wants Hamas to release the hostages, he's saying, I want you to release these Israelis. In other words, he's taking the side of Israel. Hamas looks upon that very disfavorably. In fact, I think probably most of the Islamic world does. Not all of the Islamic world. There are varied and nuanced positions within the Islamic world. But on the whole, they're not going to be charmed by that statement of Trump's. So there's an ongoing tension between some of the states of the Middle Eastern world and the United States. And everybody knows about that. So they are the ones that would have reason to issue a response, a symbolic or emblematic response, not a verbal announcement, but a show of force to communicate their displeasure. That's one possibility. So where did these drones go in the first instance? They went to Mar-a-Lago, right over Trump's estate, I understand, and then also to interior New Jersey, which is where one of his golf club properties is, the Bedminster Golf Course. I think it's called Golf Club, if I remember correctly, the Bedminster. It's in interior New Jersey. And that is where so many of these drones have been seen. They've been seen in counties from south up to north, New Jersey, right through the center of the state, and particularly in the northern part of New Jersey, which is actually a portion of the New York City metropolitan area. That's where it all started, right close to where Trump's own properties and his deep family roots are.
Right. So this is very interesting because this is something I haven't really heard anyone else connecting. I haven't heard people connecting these dots. You know, everybody is, you know, screaming extraterrestrials, drones, military drills. I mean, but no one's really mentioning Trump. And it is interesting that Trump and Elon have remained eerily quiet during this, actually. And it just makes you wonder, like somebody, I think Ashton Forbes made a great point about Elon Musk. You know, he's you know, sending satellites up, you know, weekly, and he has you know, a satellite grid orbiting the planet. You'd think he would be openly chiming in on this, you know, this drone incursion, right? So it's interesting the people that are actually remaining quiet about it and what this actually means. So what are your thoughts on it potentially being some sort of a drill, like some people are saying, to prepare us for something actually bigger coming?
Well, not much, but I want to go back to a more complete answer to your original question, if I may, and then we'll come back to this one. Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry if I changed the subject early on you.
No, it's no problem. There's so much to talk about here, really. One of the reports that really caught my attention comes from a person on the ground in New Jersey. I believe it was a park ranger, or it was some type of state employee who was patrolling an area on the beach at New Jersey, along the New Jersey coastline. And I heard this story from one of the, I believe it was either a mayor of a city in New Jersey or one of the state legislators. Somebody in New Jersey was interviewed about this, and he conveyed this story. And here is the story. The park ranger, we'll say, or state employee, was patrolling there, doing his usual duty along this New Jersey beach. I believe it was at night. And he said that he saw 50, that is 50 or 48, 49, 50. 50 of these drones, such as what people are describing in interior New Jersey, 50 of them coming over the Atlantic, over the water, from east of him, that's out in the water, toward him, over the beach, and into interior New Jersey. So that would suggest that they are coming from somewhere out in the water, out in the Atlantic Ocean. So where is that? We do not know. No one knows at this point, but one logical choice would be from a launching platform out there, such as a boat or a submarine, or possibly maybe even it is an extraterrestrial thing coming up out of the water. I don't know. But this individual saw a swarm of 50 coming from the water side of the New Jersey beach area over into interior New Jersey. That's a point to bear in mind. Another point to bear in mind, and this is a story that was told by an individual resident of New Jersey. A woman was at a reservoir, a very important reservoir. The reservoir, which as far as I understand, is one of the key water supplies for New York City. And she said she saw 60 of these drone-like or drone objects congregated over that reservoir. For how long, I don't know. We need details on that. But she said 60. I found from another discussion, this one I believe was a New Jersey state official, happened to mention that this all began on November 15, and the very first sighting was a line swarm of drones going up the Raritan River toward that reservoir. It looks to me like these drones and their operators have an interest in the reservoir, the water supply for New York City. Certainly some extraterrestrial crafts that we've known about in years past have also had interest in reservoir areas. We've had reports and read reports, and it's in the record of UFO sightings that some craft appear to put down tubes of types and extract water from reservoirs. So, it's within the range of thinking that it could be extraterrestrials going forth for that purpose, but we really don't have any reason to exclude the other possibility, which is, no, it's just a normal foreign adversary who is looking for a way to send a signal to the United States of America. I ask rhetorically, has there ever been a nation that wanted to send a signal to the United States of America in the New York City area? Has that ever happened in the past? Yes. Yes, it has. And unfortunately, we know what it is. And we've got a pretty good idea who is behind it. So there's a bit of a history on this. If you consider all of that, it kind of looks like foreign adversaries ought to at least be on the table as a potential cause for what we're looking at. I would not discount the extraterrestrial hypothesis, though. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think everything should be laid out on the table right now. Something we always say is all the above. And one second. So yeah, I think all the above is always on the table, especially whenever we're dealing with the unknown in this case. And I did find it interesting. There are so many theories and so many different videos, but the one that caught my attention the most recently was we're seeing actual shots being fired from these drones. And in two different videos, I've seen shots are being fired from the drones, and I'm seeing videos now people firing at the drones. And the people firing at some of these drones seem to have no effect whatsoever. And it argues the question of potential blue beam technology, which is, I know a lot of people have a hard time with that, but we've been hearing about this fake alien invasion threat for a decade now, easily, if not longer. People, Warner von Braun has talked about this. That will be the last card that they pull, is a fake invasion. So is this a precursor to that? We have this drone or this radar guy, that 25-year radar operator. I'll just read what he said. I'm sure everybody's seen this by now, but 25-year radar operator for a major agency here. Just thought I'd let you all know what has been going on these past few weeks. The drones are part of a military drill, in quotes, being conducted by Space Force. Everything is on a need-to-know basis, which is why there's so much confusion. What gets me concerned and why I had to make this post is that something big is about to go down. I happen to know that there are additional full lockout drills that are scheduled to take place between now and Christmas Eve. These operations involve the full turnover of all radio/radar and aircraft communications to the military for several hours at a time. In conjunction with that, there are also scheduled satellite launches off the books, which have been occurring since October. They are setting up some kind of big show for the public very soon. CNN was even at our facility shooting pre-roll footage for a future story. I don't know exactly what is going on, but all I know is this: get ready, peace and safety to all of you and your families. And I know that's a bold statement, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Maureen.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. Appreciate that. The issue of multiple possibilities, competing theories, speculations, and hypotheses are all consistent with what happens under a retrograde Mercury period. And we are in a retrograde Mercury period. Probably your listeners are very familiar with what retrograde Mercury periods are all about. They are normally rife with, shall we say, rumors, oftentimes incomplete information, the circulation of half-truths. And this has been going on for centuries. Every time we have a retrograde Mercury period, of course, the topics and the content change over time, obviously. But so, Mercury has been formally retrograde since late November. It was in the degrees of the zodiac that would be associated by retrogradation already by the time this set of drone sightings started, November 15th. So the entire period is now conditioned by retrograde Mercury. Shortly, Mercury will turn direct. The date is December 15th. What we can expect at that point is the beginning of some clarity and factual accuracy about what's going on. I know that sounds like a huge claim. We've got so many different actors on the scene here, and some of them we know have lied to us consistently over the last, several decades, and certainly in the last 3 years, massively. How in the world can we expect to get any truth out of them? Well, it doesn't sound very realistic. But by hook or by crook, bits and pieces of truth and clarity will begin to come out around December the 15th. And as Mercury continues on in direct motion, we can expect better and better angles of vision on what's going on here. So that's not really a full answer to your question. It's an astrological contribution to the situation. What are my thoughts about the particular claims that the fellow right there was making, that it's all a military exercise and leading to some kind of major show to play on the consciousness of America or the world. Anything is possible. It is absolutely possible. But, maybe I'm old school. There's a good chance of that. I was born in 1951. Maybe I'm old school, but it sounds a little on the far side to me. I wouldn't discount it entirely, but it sounds a little on the far side to me. I probably look for difficult causes and responsible parties a little bit closer to known situations than that. Others might argue, well, we know that the military and the government are pulling multiple hoaxes on us all the time, and I would agree. I would totally agree. But I just don't have any factual tie down for that particular hypothesis myself. Now, there are some other things that we should bring into the consideration tonight that are of an astrological nature, which I'd like to tell you too, but what would you like to go into at this point?
Well, I did. First of all, would you mind muting yourself whenever I start speaking, because it creates a little bit of a feedback. If not, I can mute you on my end.
I don't see readily where, oh, I see it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So for me, the red flag with that narrative is that CNN is involved. If CNN is already at this guy's agency, wherever he works, preparing, filming footage, preparing a story for whatever big event is going to happen, that means it's predictive programming. There might be a potential that this story was intentionally leaked to start that narrative, right? They know how this stuff works. They know how it catches on. They know how it goes viral. And they know which people are going to run with something like that. So the fact that CNN, the very fact that they're involved, automatically makes me think some sort of a false flag, like that maybe this could be the fake invasion that we've been hearing about. Maybe, because why would a major network like CNN, who has a horrible track record at this point, be the first ones in on this story? Unless we can't trust anything coming from them. So right off the bat, I'm already skeptical about the whole thing. I don't doubt that something major will happen, but it will all be under the guise of probably a threat, I would imagine. And that's kind of what they've been going for the whole time. So I think we have to consider that. Also, like if we really want to zoom out and like talk about the cabal and the deep state and the evil controllers, the satanic overlords, anybody who's really been pulling the strings on this planet for a while now, what do they thrive on? They thrive on confusion. How do they control us? Through confusion, through division. So it's almost like, you have the U.S. congressman coming out telling us that this is an Iranian mothership that's deploying drones over U.S. soil and they should be shot down on sight. Within the same breath, we have the Pentagon coming out saying, no, that's not true. They're not a threat. Iran does not have a mothership, and whatever. They completely counter that narrative. You can't tell me that wasn't at some level orchestrated to create confusion amongst us. And it's like at this point it doesn't even matter what we think as long as we're confused. And if we're confused, then that keeps us out of our heart, right? And it's almost in a state of fear, and then they're therefore further controlling us. And what a perfect way to do that, if they do have some sort of scary event coming, this is a perfect precursor for that. Muddy the waters so much to where people literally have no idea what is going on, to where when something actually does happen, they might actually be scared, and it might be all engineered. This might be a major false flag event, or I would also argue that it's possible that some of these ETs are finally showing themselves for real. Like they know we're not going to do the disclosure, so they're disclosing themselves. And maybe some of these drones are being sent up to muddy the waters. Like I said, this way we don't know what's real and what's fake, and they're going to convince us into believing the fake stuff is real, and vice versa. They're further lending to the confusion. So. Um, Lily, did you want to chime in on any of this before we move on to back to Maureen?
I like everything that you just said, and I haven't really been following too much about what's in the news, but I've been getting a lot of messages and kind of like last couple of weeks getting a lot of the messaging that I've been getting false flag type deal occurring and some stage threats in that they're kind of testing the water. That I'm also receiving messages about are real UFOs out there and real contact experiences happening too. So it's kind of like this convoluted thing that's been going. I think it's both, and I think they're kind of just like testing the waters right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point as well. So, Maureen, what do you have to say about any of that? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Thank you. What I would say is I just love that you beautiful young people dig into matters of truth and untruth so assiduously. I commend you all for your courage and your attention to world events. I love it. I love it about your generation, and I celebrate it. Into that, I bring also my older generation, which is I'm looking at these long-term astrological influences and what they show. And one of the things that I can tell you is that in July, which is not very far away, mid-July, there's going to be a very significant shift in regard to the type of information that's available to the public. Uranus will move out of Taurus, where it's been for about 7 years, and into the information-oriented sign of Gemini. And I expect that when that happens over the next 7 years following that, while Uranus is in that sign, Gemini, that there's going to be a tremendous change in the nature of the information available to us. So, in other words, a lot of things that have been hidden in the past are going to come out and circulate amongst humanity and be known. I would say in that bunch is the nature of the JFK killing or assassination and the history on UFO sightings. So this is getting ready to change. That's not an answer to any of these questions, but it is an overview of what kind of world we're dealing with right now. Another thing, if you were reading, if anybody who's been reading my posts on the astrology of world events, you've seen that I have said that with Pluto in Aquarius, which we now have and will have for the next 18 years, that it's highly likely that humanity will become more aware of its cosmic environment. Well, we're already nicely aware of our cosmic environment through astrophysics. So what would more aware? Well, that would be on a personal basis, such that that awareness is not confined to scientific establishment, but is more the property of the average human being and the family or the community of humanity around the world. Something is going to occur that will allow that to happen. So Pluto is now in Aquarius, and it entered the sign of Aquarius on November the 19th, this current year, that's 2024. It entered Aquarius to stay for 18 years, just within a few days of all these anomalous sightings beginning to be noticed in New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia. As an aside, I would like to mention that there are also throughout the world an uptick in anomalous sightings now that Pluto's in Aquarius. As Lily was just referring to, she's getting all these messages. It's all over the place. It's on Facebook. It's on X or Twitter. It's on so many platforms. The information seems to be rolling out. Now, how many of these sightings are genuine, we don't know, but we do know that people are seeing things in the sky which are what they consider to be anomalous, lots of them. So astrology would support the notion that there could be contact between our cosmic environment and humanity in the form of extraterrestrial visitors or crafts or thought streams in some fashion or another. So that's a part of an answer.
Yeah, and reminder to mute yourself again, please, just so we don't create any feedback. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. And it's interesting to note. It's important to note that this isn't just New Jersey or the United States. We're seeing this globally. I was listening to a guy last night from Australia saying that these drones, quote drones, are appearing over Pine Gap, which is in the Northern Territory of Australia, which is a U.S. base, actually. It's an American base in Australia, and technically the land that Pine Gap sits on is considered U.S. soil, and which I find interesting. But he said it's very similar to our Area 51, where it's a restricted airspace. Nothing should be flying over Pine Gap. Yet they're having these sightings over Pine Gap. Now you can say maybe it's a drill, and that's why they're allowed. Either way, it's restricted airspace. Apparently, according to the reports, that they're not supposed to be there, but we can't believe the reports. What I'm trying to say is, it's not just the United States. It's happening in other parts of the world, and in mass sightings, we have cell phone footage. We have footage of all types. Really high definition cameras in some cases. Some of it's foggy, pixelated, but either way, we have just an unrealistic amount of sightings. Something that we would have never expected to see. Certainly this soon, this early on. And I think the important thing to note there is that the conversation is changing. UFOs are part of the conversation now. NHI, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, it's here to stay. And I would argue that I would say by 2026 we're probably gonna know of the existence of UFOs, and they might even be frequently seen from here on out. I don't know if that'll ever change at this point. And we're moving into we're transitioning. We're moving into what some people call the Star Trek future, and maybe this is just exactly what it's supposed to look like.
Tyler, I am reminded to mention at this point, following what you just said, that Ross Coulthart on Reality Check with News Nation has recently reported that that similar anomalistic sightings to what is being seen in New Jersey now is now being captured over nations that are in adversarial relationship with the United States. In other words, people that could conceivably be our enemies are also seeing these things. So not only the United States and our friends Australia, and by the way, England, not only our allies, but also our adversaries are reporting these sightings.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And that's what I'm saying. So it's like not like we can't. There's not one narrative that makes perfect sense at this point. And I would argue that maybe some people don't know actually what's going on, and the government doesn't like what they can't control. So if they can't control it, they try to control the narrative surrounding it. And I think maybe that's just what we're looking at right now. And maybe it's on some level, their hand is being forced, maybe whether from a foreign adversary or intergalactic invasion. I mean, who knows? But I think that I think their hand is possibly being forced, and they don't even know how to respond to this properly. We can sit here and speculate all night long, but I really do think that I do think this is a transition period, and like things will never be the same after this. And what's also concerning is we've had two plane crashes. The plane crashed in, I think, New Jersey, New York area, and then another one in Texas. And allegedly, the story goes that it was related to a drone sighting. So, what are your thoughts on us actually seeing plane crashes now?
From the astrological standpoint,
No, not necessarily, but just in general, like we're seeing plane crashes as a result to these drones now. Do you think that's part of and you think that would be intentional, or I don't know? I'm just curious what you might think about that.
well, I think the congressional hearing of July 26th with Ryan Graves, Luis Elizondo, and David Fravor made it very clear that our airspaces are filled up with things that could conceivably cause aeronautics disasters at any point. They were talking about it a year and some ago. Do you remember this?
I do now, yeah, vaguely, but yeah, remind
Yeah,
us.
so, yeah, okay. So before Congress and under oath, these three gentlemen, all of whom have experience in various levels of the military and our government, had this generally, all of them said the same thing, which was military observers have spotted UAP activity around drills and trainings and military posts and facilities for decades, really, but that it's stepping up. And certainly by July of 2023, that was the case, so much so that Ryan Graves started an organization to try to bring attention to this problem, specifically air safety compromised by moving objects of an unknown nature clustering around civilian and military airstrips and airports. So what do I think about it? I think it's reality. It's a miracle. We haven't had a major disaster. If you go back into the history of sightings, and I've studied some 300 records of sightings between 1941 and present time. Pilots have been saying this forever and ever. They've been saying they thought they were going to have to take evasive action in order to avoid an impact or a collision. This has been going on for a very long period of time. I don't know how governments have managed to ignore this. It makes absolutely no sense as far as I can tell. So yeah, it's all too likely if we don't get what? Better sensing systems? I don't know. I think we probably need a better attitude on the part of the FAA and the federal government away from the ARO position, which is that, we can't find anything of any concern,
Right. I mean, that's kind of, laughable whenever they come out with those reports at this point. And, I've said this a number of times, but, they even had the audacity to throw weather balloon back into one of the recent reports. And I can only imagine like some guy sitting behind a desk with his feet kicked up, smoking a cigar, laughing at everybody, just laughing at it, knowing that the whole thing is a dog and pony show. And, this whole like UAP task force arrow disclosure, which in one sense is, for the people who have been following this stuff, it's like old news to us, yawn. But it is reaching a large group of people, thousands of people who haven't been paying attention or following this stuff at all, and it is affecting the collective consciousness on that level. So it is serving a purpose, but uh, even though it's like for us, it's like old news, right? It's nothing new. And matter of fact, it almost seems like we're going a step backwards whenever you hear some of these reports. They are finally bringing some interesting things into the conversation as far as like interdimensional beings and genetic experiments and things of that nature, which is huge actually. And one of the arguments being made is that they don't bring any of the experiencers' testimonies into the hearings, and I would say that's because the experiencer testimonies are largely stories of my labs, military abductions, and they're not going to let those people come tell the stories because that means they would have to, if they admit it's real, they have to tell on themselves, and they're not going to do that. So what we're witnessing now is everybody, they're just trying to tiptoe around this subject and trying to figure out a way to disclose it without telling on themselves, because it is a national scandal. People have blood on their hands. There's treason involved. People have been killed in the name of keeping this stuff secret. We all know that. So we're not going to get anybody, any talking head, any Lou Elizondo or anybody like that who is actually going to give us any real truth as far as what's going on. Lou Elizondo said himself in an interview that he can't talk about anything that's not in his book. And unfortunately, there's NDAs that he solved and probably blackmail involved with some of these people. And, we've only heard stories of how these people's, like Lou's family could have been, like they might have threatened him or his family. If you talk, um, we'll pull the rug out from under you, basically, that type of thing. So I don't think we're going to get any sort of actual real truth from anybody within the government or the UAP task force or, anything like that. I think it comes from us. Like Stephen Greer said, disclosure happened decades ago and it came from us. All the information is readily available online if you know where to look. more than enough information to prove matter-of-factly that this stuff is real, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I think it was Reagan, one of the presidents, said the American public will not believe anything unless it comes from the TV, and that's the problem. Even people who are in this disclosure community, I see them debating about these hearings, and I'm like, guys, this, like, it's already been done. This is not for us. There's other things we could really be bringing this conversation to the next level, but we can't focus on this stuff that, in my opinion, sometimes is designed as a distraction. I realized I just went on a major rant and took this thing. I side railed this whole conversation, but Lily or Maureen, did you want to chime in on that?
Lily, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I like everything that you just said, and that's some of the messaging that I've been getting recently is about the power of the witness testimonies, like coming from us, actually. And like you were saying, like disclosure really is here. It's just it's happening through us. So, yeah, I agree with that. And I think we're going to see an uptick in people coming forward and sharing their stories. And I agree about the My Lab thing. Like that's like a big problem and has been running rampant for quite some time. And I think more of that's going to be coming to light. I've also been getting kind of intuitive hits or um, sensations on even going deeper down the rabbit hole about like cloning and stem cell research and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, I think we have some pretty exciting times ahead of us. And then on top of that, actual uh, more contact happening with actual galactic beings I'm seeing also. So it's kind of like a convoluted thing, but yeah, I agree. A lot of it's going to come forward through us. We can't rely on what the TV is saying because it's just trying to confuse and kind of muddy the waters at this point, it feels like.
Yeah, I think mainstream television is a tool of the narrative. Whoever runs the narrative, who is running the narrative, certainly the United States government is attempting to run the narrative, and there may be some other actors in there as well. It's kind of a boring set of programming, if you ask me. I think the real action can be, if we want it to be, outside of that rather narrow reality. And what I hear and all we're talking about here is an unstated question, which is how do we get oriented to this moment and make our actions and experiences, our human experiences, meaningful and relevant within this context? Nobody's raised that question. It's just something that I've been thinking about, and I think it's kind of a subtext to what we're talking about here. And that's why I offer the larger perspective of astrology, which it's particularly useful for that kind of question. And what I see from the astrological influences is that we're not headed towards a disaster. We're not headed towards the demise of the human kingdom. Hey, isn't that great news? There was really an attack on humanity 2019, 2020, 2021, 2023, especially 2020 and 2021. And there's an astrological correlate to that. It was the triple presence of Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. I've written a lot about this. It's up on my, that treatment, various treatments of it are up on my Substack called The Astrology of World Events. So if anybody's curious about more, you can go there and read about it. But anyway, those years were heavily influenced by this triple Capricornian impact, which also included Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, and hence the ending days of that particular cycle and the new beginning of it. And that goes back to these planetary pair cycles I mentioned earlier in this discussion. These are the things to look at, and the key dynamic is the position or time or moment, the place and time that one finds oneself within that cycle. Is it between conjunction and opposition, or opposition and conjunction? The conjunction is like new moon. The opposition is like full moon. All the energy, creativity, happening, acceleration, growth, and so forth are concentrated from new to full. After that, it's winding down and understanding and rebirth at new moon. So in the case of these longer planetary cycles, the waxing half can be up to 250 years. A huge period of time. And that's the case with the Neptune-Pluto cycle, which is about 500 years long. We are firmly within the expansion phase of the Neptune-Pluto cycle. We're also within the expansion phase of the Uranus-Neptune cycle, which last restarted in 1993 and will continue in expansion through the year 2080. We're also in the opening or expansion phase of the Uranus-Pluto cycle, which last came to conjunction, equivalent to the new moon, in 1965. Actually, the mid-1960s. It formed several times, but 1965 is a good marker year. That's correct. And will be in expansion until 2047. 2047, so more than 20 years forward from now. We are firmly within the expansion phases of those three cycles, and they are the three most powerful in terms of world history and world trends. I know because I've studied it back into history. That's how I found out about it. Now, there are some shorter cycles that play in too, such as the Saturn-Pluto, Saturn-Neptune, and Saturn-Uranus. But these are the three most powerful. They're all firmly in the expansion phase for a good long time. 20 plus more years for the Uranus-Pluto, nearly 50 plus for the Uranus-Neptune, and way over into the next century for the Neptune-Pluto. This absolutely implies that we have a lot to work with. We've got a lot to look forward to. We're on the uptick of human evolution and everything that carries with it. So we have all these positive possibilities that are working for us right now, and they're going to continue to work for us in the next 3 years. There are some astrological influences coming into effect that I've outlined on my Substack, and I can tell you about here if we have time. But over the years, let's see, it's April 2025 through June 2028, there will form a sequence of astrological aspects, that's geometrical aspects between, or relationships between the planets as we view them through the zodiac from the Earth, that will really create conditions that are very much dissimilar to the recent bad dream we had in 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 2019, and so on. Just recently, which has really affected everybody. It's affected all of our outlooks. We have an enormous amount of distrust. We know we've been misled on many important questions, including our bodily health and our freedom and our liberties, very sorely impacting our happiness, our joy, and our positive expectations for the future. It was a very big impact. We do not have a similar astrological arrangement coming in the next few years. Instead, we have the promise of many positive developments that I personally am looking forward to with great and positive anticipation. Thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great news. Reminder just to mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. That's absolutely great news. And I'd like to take this time to invite anyone else who has a question for either me, Lily, or Maureen, or who wants to just chime in or has something to add to the conversation. You can just request to speak and raise your hand, and we can call on people. Jace, I see that you're in here. I know you're following this stuff. If you want to chime in, Beth, Katie, Mabry, I know you're down there. Anybody who wants to chime in, you can go ahead and do so now or ask any questions. And I guess, Lily, did you have anything to add to that before we take any more, while we're waiting for people to hop in here?
Yeah, I would like to add to what Maureen was just saying. I am seeing, I'm extremely optimistic and super excited for what is to come, really. We're kind of just watching all of this play out, and it's like grab a bag of popcorn type deal, kind of. Like it's all kind of going through the motions. we've known this disclosure is coming for a while, and we're kind of watching it all play out. And some of the more nefarious people, cabal members, people with not good intentions, they're starting to be exposed. And with the shifting in energy and more people waking up to this, the masks are coming off. And a quote that I received the other day, I really, really liked, was, "They have smoke and mirrors, and we have smoking guns." As in, like, we have evidence. And all of this is about to come to light. Everything that they've been hiding is about to come to light. And they're just kind of doing, what's the term, like dog and pony show type thing, and smoke and mirror type tactics. Yeah, we're just kind of watching it all play out. But I'm feeling super optimistic and really excited for what's coming. We're really in the golden age. And again, touching on the contact with actual extraterrestrial beings, I've been having contact recently, an uptick with contact with beings from Alpha Centauri, and specifically from Alpha Centauri. And they've been showing me that that's one of the first places where openly it will be disclosed that there's life outside of our solar system. And I believe this race of beings is going to be one of the first ones to really, like, openly have direct contact with us. And I was seeing that actually just this morning, I think. Whenever I woke up, I received some messages about expanded levels of awareness for the people incoming. And I heard sky unit and saw all of these UFOs in the sky, like authentic UFOs. And it seemed like it could be broadcasted on TV, I'm not sure. But these beings were from Alpha Centauri, and they finished off by saying the Great Awakening. So on top of all of this kind of convoluted stuff that we've got going on, the smoke and mirrors, we've got actual contact. We're closer than ever. But of course, it's happening already on a very individual level with a lot of people. So many people are starting to have actual authentic contact too. So yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the they have smoke and mirrors, we have smoking gun. I mean, if that doesn't just, wrap it up and put a bow on top for the times we're in right now, I think that's, I love that. And what's interesting about the Alpha Centaurian thing, and then we'll get to Fringe since she has her hand up. But the Alpha Centauri thing, if anybody remembers, years ago, David Wilcock talking about his insider Henry Deacon from, oh man, like 2007, 2006. I mean, a long time ago, he was talking about the Centaurians actually being gifted a safe haven in the United States in Paradise, California. And there was a large number of them living there in a specific neighborhood. And they were part of the planned disclosure. They were going to be the first group of ETs we would be introduced to as a humanity globally, and that would be specifically because Alpha Centauri is technically the next closest star, right? And it just kind of fits that narrative perfect, and it would make sense. Like, oh well, it's the closest one, so obviously it's the first place we would find life. But David Wilcock had a lot. He said he claimed that he had like 3 or 4 different insiders that were sharing intel with him back then, years ago, about the Centaurians living in Paradise, California, and that area was specifically targeted by the Cabal with a direct energy weapon to destroy them and whatever was happening there. And there is safe havens of these extraterrestrials on the planet already here in human form. If anybody's read the book Stranger at the Pentagon, with Valiant Thor, who spent 3 years living underneath the Pentagon in an apartment, essentially working with our government and world leaders and scientists all over the world, and trying to work, gift humanity some amazing technology and healing technology, I guess. And in his terms, he said it was a pathetic refusal because they knew it would undermine our economy. And they denied all the free energy technology and medbed technology, healing technology, all for the sake of maintaining the economy and he called it a pathetic refusal. But what he said was that, in that book, which I believe is very true information, that in particular the Venusians were here, and he said at the time there were 77 of them in human form just walking among us. On we would walk past them on the streets and have no idea that they're not extraterrestrial. So the fact that there's any sort of like first open contact is kind of silly because they've been here forever. But just to add to Lily's point about the Centaurians, I think that's something that I would actually agree that is quite likely the case. Maybe it didn't happen the first time around, and because things change in the fog of war, and that's exactly what this is right now. It's a spiritual war on many levels, and I think maybe they're going to try and play the Centaurian card again. I'm going to go ahead and give Fringe a chance to ask a question or chime in, and then Jace will get to you.
Hey guys, I'm loving the space. I'm glad you guys are coming over to Twitter. We'll get more crazy people over here. Yeah, I've seen so many different beings, so I'm excited to have more of this come out. I had two questions. I'm not sure if you guys talked about it yet. First of all, like, what gets you into looking at the correlation between the UFO sightings and the astrology? Because to me, that's like I'm into both. I study esoteric astrology, so like, I don't know. I understand the elements of the planets and things, so that makes sense. And I never thought about the Pluto. Yeah, just it all makes sense. Anyways, I'm going to go back and re-listen again. But I'm curious of what got you into it, and if you've seen these UFOs yourself, like what was the very first time or beings? Thank you.
I think that question was for me, Tyler, so I'll just go ahead. Thank you, Fringe, for chiming in and for your thoughts. I appreciate it. So I've been an astrologer since the early 1980s. And in that period of time, I've worked on many, many different notions, approaches, applications of astrology, including financial astrology. In order to do that, I had to use a broad range of techniques in astrology. Well, what I learned doing that is that the major planetary aspects at any time condition world events. In other words, make them happen and tell the story of what will happen and what is happening and why we're thinking about what we're thinking about. So in, I believe it was February of 2020, suddenly I forget, 2023, yes, I did have an anomalous sighting myself. I've been in metaphysics since the 1970s, so, all this stuff is well known to me. But I don't think I had a lot of anomalistic sky sightings before that. But I did in February of 2023, and so I got right immediately into a serious study and examination of the entire history of the UFO phenomenon, and started studying all the major sources, and Richard Dolan, getting histories together. And as an astrologer, the first question one is going to ask is, what was the astrological condition when this event occurred? You can approach that two ways. You could look either at the transits to the chart of the individual who had the sighting, or you could just look at the astrological conditions at the time of the sighting. So I went about looking for sightings for which not only the month and day were known, but also the clock time and location. Fortunately, there are a lot of such sightings, many more than anybody would want to study. I studied about 300. There's a fantastic website for this purpose. It'll come to me in a minute. It's pilot sightings. Of course, those happened up in the air. I didn't use those. I used some from various sources, including David Marler's Triangle UFOs, Robert Hastings' UFO and Nukes. That was a very important study. And Richard Dolan's reports on times and places of sightings. So for the ones that had location, month, day, year, and clock time, I could do an astrological chart, just like for a person. It's called an event chart. So I did that for a bunch of sightings. About 150 of my sample I had complete information for, and about 150 others I had only month and day. So I could look at the specific chart for the event for the ones that I had clock times for, and the others I could look at the general aspects. So I did. That's what I did. And I found out many interesting things. I found out that UFO sightings don't happen randomly. They happen at specific times. Now that raises a whole set of questions about why. What's the connection? Why would this be so? We could dig into that if we wanted to now or in another discussion, but anyway, that is what I found. Particularly, I found that UFO sightings tend to occur when celestial bodies are angular. That's an astrological term for on the eastern horizon, overhead, on the western horizon, or underfoot. And that particular pattern was present in numerous major UFO sightings, including mass sightings like the Westall school sighting in Melbourne, Australia, or Sydney. It was one of the major cities of Australia in the 1960s, mid-1960s, when I think it was 100 or more high school students were treated to a several-minute encounter with beings that arrived in classic saucer-type vehicles from outer space. And then they hovered there on the schoolyard edge, and the kids were able to see it for a good long period of time. That's the Westall, Westall, Westall school sighting occurred in, I think it was 1966, if I remember correctly. Well, that was a very astrologically unique period of time because in the sky there was a Uranus-Pluto conjunction in the sign of Virgo. That only happens every once 135 years or so, so that's a very rare occurrence. Well, there was one at that time, and the Earth had turned in its normal revolution, daily revolution, rotation on its own axis, in just such a way that that Uranus-Pluto conjunction was directly underfoot, conjunct the fourth house cusp, in other words, if you know the astrological chart form, at the time of that event. Their clock time was known for that event, so it's possible to do a full astrological chart for such an event. So that's one of the things I learned right there, was that this is not a random happening. You could ask the question, if it's not random, is it predictable? The answer is yes, it's predictable. It could have been predicted. It could have been known ahead of time. And as you can see, what I'm telling you right now raises a whole panoply of metaphysical questions. But that's how I got into it.
Thank you for that amazing answer. That was, I love that. And there is a pattern and it can be predicted. So if it can be predicted astrologically, you know, I would be interested to see, you know, what coming dates would be, you know, some that we should look out for. But Jace, we'll go ahead and bring you into the conversation. Thanks for being here. I don't know. I'm going to ask you specifically to chime in what your thoughts are on the Space Force aspect of this and the military drill, but whatever else you had to say also. Welcome to the space, Jace.
Hey guys, what's up? Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting the space, Tyler and Lily, and for Maureen for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge with the astrology. It's really fascinating to hear that connection. And hey, it's 7:17 right now, my local time, so that's a fun synchro. So yeah, the first thing that I was thinking of was it's interesting that these things are getting called drones by the media and the government and law enforcement, because unidentified flying object would honestly be a lot more accurate in a literal sense. But obviously, they want to call them drones to downplay any kind of fear and mass panic that the loaded term UFO has. But one of the things that I found interesting, and I'm not able to confirm this 100% because obviously I'm not on the ground there in New Jersey, and you never know what videos are real and what's not on the internet. It's really hard to discern in the age of AI and CGI, just going from videos. But I've seen mixed types of videos. Obviously, there's the videos of the very physical metal airplane looking craft that seem to be what they're calling like around the size of an SUV, small airplane jet kind of thing. But I've seen other videos that look like plasma orbs. And when they zoom in on them, I saw one particular one where it was like a 200x zoom. I think Ashton Forbes shared this one. And when it was zoomed in, it was very much like a cymatics plasma orb type of craft or being or entity. And that's where, to me, I agree with Lily that it feels like a mixed form of phenomena that we're experiencing. And before the Space Force thing was brought up that you guys were reading earlier, I was feeling like part of this was galactic in nature, but then part of it wasn't. Like part of these feel very physical, very human, and then when that Space Force thing, that whistleblower, whatever you want to call him, posted that, I found that very interesting because I do think Space Force is tied into what's happening with the Galactics, and it could be part of that as well, and maybe even all three, where there's physical higher dimensional entities, Space Force craft, and then whether you want to call them deep state or whatever kind of maybe more negative government craft. So personally, I get a mixed feeling about it as well, and when you were bringing up the stranger at the Pentagon, Tyler, that just gave me another thought as well, which is, the Eisenhower, meeting with the supposed Greys that a lot of people have heard about. In the Law of One books, the Raw channelings, they actually say, Raw says that meeting with Eisenhower was actually them, and that they took the form of, a more dense type of being to do the meeting, but that the meeting with Eisenhower was actually a way that they were trying to communicate with Eisenhower to see if the public was going to be open for open contact, because that was what they were kind of wanting to do, was initiate an open form of contact with them being sixth density, but higher density, higher dimensional beings in general. And what they said was that Eisenhower, um, even though he was very open and friendly with them himself, he didn't feel like his colleagues in the government and that the American people would be receptive to it. And he felt like it would throw them into a mass panic. So they basically respected his free will on that as the leader of the nation, and basically stepped back from doing an open contact. But one of the other things that they describe in those channelings is what they call the law of squares, which is the idea that the more people who are coming together in a similar intention through prayer, meditation, and just really combined intention around something, it has this squaring effect where it's not the sum of the intention of the people coming together, but it actually is a squaring where it's like an exponential effect. And that's where I know you guys have talked about a lot this too, where a small group of people with a positive intention and a positive prayer for humanity can overpower the masses in either their asleep nature, not knowing what's going on, or the very few on the dark side who are trying to do a similar thing. And I believe that they said that this law of squares only works for the service to others positive frequency. I could be incorrect about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they said. And so what I was getting around this too is that this feels like that moment. And the words that I heard the other day was the call has been heard. And so it feels like to me that whatever is happening on the 3D level, that there's enough people calling in for higher dimensional assistance basically at this time, that those beings are also there watching over this at the very least. And so maybe that's why we're seeing both these physical craft and these more plasma orb type entities at the same time. So yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
I just want to add something interesting that I hadn't really thought of before that you just mentioned, Jace, but I actually got some messages kind of regarding what you were just talking about. Um, the other day, just a couple of days ago, I saw some blue avian beings, and then they mentioned Laura Eisenhower, and I saw President Eisenhower, and I saw like these classified documents that had to do with that time period, and I was picking up on the law of one too, and that kind of confused me. Like, how is that all connected? But what you just mentioned about the law of one and those beings potentially coming down as grays to meet him in a more dense uh, physical bodysuit, if you will, that could actually make sense. And I know that some of these beings from the Andromeda galaxy, they're very higher dimensional beings, and some of them come out to be able to work with humans on this more like 3D, this denser scape. They have to come into bodies like, and they chose kind of like this gray like body. So I don't know. I just wanted to add that. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting connection. It almost lines up verbatim with what you said, Jace. And I don't believe there's any coincidence these days. And Jace, just because I find it very interesting, if I would like to give you the opportunity to just briefly tell the audience about your aerospace background and what you experienced, about discovering these black programs and stuff whenever you were in school.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, about 10 years ago, I was in college and I was in school for aerospace engineering at a school called Cal Poly in California, which is right next to Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is now Vandenberg Space Force Base. And my sophomore, junior year, I was really involved with the Aerospace Society called the AIAA. And I was treasurer one year, and then I became president the next year. And that was when I was really going through my major awakening, not only because I was experimenting with psychedelics at the time, and that was really opening my third eye to things and making me realize, the true spiritual nature of reality, but at the same time, I had professors that were involved in these black budget projects. That one in particular was not somebody I ever actually took a class with, but I was familiar with him because he was in the department. And I had a lot of his students who were in his classes come to me, talking to me about what they were experiencing because they knew I was into, these quote unquote conspiracy theories and black budget programs. And so this one professor, he was the father of the F-22 fighter jet. He was the main manager engineering head for the whole project. And when I was in school, he was a pretty old guy. I don't know if he's still around now. He might have passed away. I'm not sure. But at the time, he was retired, but still doing kind of contract retirement work with Skunk Works. So Skunk Works being the advanced aerospace division of Lockheed Martin, where they do all of this black budget project work. And so not only would I had students come to me in my classes that were telling me that he was playing them these like conspiracy theory videos is the way they called it. They're like he's playing these videos of these Project Aurora, Flying Triangle, what we know now as the TR-3B vehicles. And they would say that he would just sit in the back of the class and kind of have a smirk on his face while playing these videos, and then basically allude to that he worked on it, but because he was under NDAs, he wasn't allowed to talk about it. But I can imagine that if you've been in his shoes and you've seen these kind of things and you can't talk about it, you're going to want to try to seed these little bits of consciousness and awareness about these things to these up and coming aerospace engineers in the field. So it's basically what he was doing. And then he also had a model for each of the projects that he worked on at Skunk Works. So he had like a F-22, I think he had like a F-117, and a couple of other planes and spacecraft. And 5 of those were just black rocks, like literal black rocks. And so when people asked him about it, like, why do you have these black rocks on your desk? He explained that they were classified projects from the 1970s that were still classified that he couldn't talk about. So he kind of gave me like William Tompkins vibes in that sense, where William Tompkins obviously was allowed to share a lot more with where he was at, but this guy was still very much involved with the university department and these groups, so he had to be very sly about how he was kind of disclosing these things. So that was a big awakening for me, and then I was also, when I was president of the Aerospace Society, I was coordinating meetings between us as our society, as our club, and Vandenberg Air Force Base. So I was working with like a particular liaison between us and the Air Force Base, and I would go and basically bring students to the base. I had to get clearance and everything. Nothing crazy. Like I wasn't privy to any kind of secret information, but had to have a background check and that kind of stuff. And we actually got to go to places on base that only Air Force personnel were allowed to go for the launch viewing. So I got to watch several of these rocket launches up close with the other like Air Force members, which was pretty cool. And I remember that was a big part of me realizing like the depth of these projects, because the majority of those rocket launches were being launched by a company called the United Launch Alliance, which is ULA for short, and they're a joint venture of Lockheed Martin and Boeing. And they were launching primarily for the NRO. So the NRO is basically the space CIA. They're the intelligence agency of space, and the majority of these launches I saw were for them. And they were launching up massive rockets, not as big as like what Starship is now with SpaceX, because that's the biggest. But they were the biggest rockets that they had at the time. I forget what it was. I think like a Delta IV Heavy or something like that. But they were basically payloads the size of like giant school buses, and it was obvious, they were classified and they wouldn't tell you what it was, and it's obvious they were some kind of covert technology, at the very least some kind of spy satellite. And there was another time where I got to have a meeting with the president of the ULA, or sorry, well, I did meet the president of ULA, but that's another, I'll tell you that in a second. But the president of the AIAA, and I went on the base. Only one other guy came with me. It was something I invited like everyone from the club, but for whatever reason, nobody wanted to come. So it was just me and this one other guy, and we end up like in this private kind of meeting on like this lodge on the base, which it was, I don't know, it was kind of almost like a Freemason lodge, to be honest. On the base, there was like a bar and like hangout area and stuff, but they were talking about like hypersonic vehicles and the future of hypersonic vehicles. And I always look back on that as just being a super trippy moment, being amongst these like, what, I don't know what they were, but it felt like military generals and people like that. And then this president of the AIAA, and like the whole time I'm just thinking about like, oh, this is all just BS. Like this is, we know what's really out there. We know truly the kind of technologies, but I wasn't going to say anything in front of, these kind of people. I didn't want to draw attention to myself in that way. Um, and there was another time where we had the president of the ULA, a guy named Tory Bruno. He's still the president, I'm pretty sure. And he came to our school and presented and laid out this whole plan for how they were going to have interstellar commercial business set up by, I think he said 2027 or 2029. And it was this whole plan for having like a base on the moon, and kind of what Elon is going for now, but this was before Elon really started to take over that space. And that guy had a really interesting vibe. I'll leave it at that. But he laid out this whole plan, and then basically what I watched over the coming years after Trump got in was Space Force creating oversight with SpaceX over these programs. So it was like Space Force was created, they started creating oversight. I know you guys have talked about this a lot on Journey to Truth, so I'm sure people are familiar with this, but they created oversight on all these black budget programs. And I just watched them, from a distance, from the position I was in, like take over this field. And SpaceX basically came in and totally took over the game from ULA. And I just heard the other day that ULA is actually dismantling because I don't know if they were going bankrupt or what the reason was, but that joint venture between Lockheed and Boeing is falling apart and it's ending. So I think that's a big sign of what's going on right now too. And obviously all the things with Boeing, with all the planes having issues and these whistleblowers, and these companies are really starting to fall apart. So I think that's a positive sign for the changes that are happening behind the scenes, even if we can't totally see it on the surface all the time. And yeah, I'll tell one other story and then I'll throw it back to you guys. So one of the times we had that this liaison that I was working with, she brought a couple of military guys to our school to talk about um, I think it's called the X-37B, the Air Force's famous space plane that is kind of their smokescreen, like surface level secret space program distraction type of thing to kind of keep people occupied with that. And this is where I kind of pushed on them a little bit and kind of picked their brain in a way to see what their responses were, because they were talking about how this X-37B, even in the news, they would talk about how it would go into missions in what they would claim would just be low Earth orbit, but it would go for years at a time. And maybe some of you guys remember that, where, we'd hear in the news like, oh, the Air Force's, famous secret space plane just landed for the first time in 3 years after, a multi-year mission in orbit. And what she did, one of the things she was talking about is how they had to have a hazmat team go out to retrieve this thing and like spray it down and make sure there wasn't radiation. And that got me thinking, well, hey, what kind of propulsion is this thing using if it has that much radiation? Like, is it just from being in the atmosphere and the outside the atmosphere in the Van Allen radiation belt, or is there something more to this? So I asked them, is this thing using some kind of nuclear propulsion? And is this doing missions to other planets? Is this thing going to Mars and other places? Why is it taking so long? And she kind of nervously looked up at her superior, military guy in the back of the room, and like gave him a look, and then looked back to me, and she's like, "I'm sorry, we can't talk about that." And I just left it at that because I didn't want to push too much on them. But I knew the answer was yes. I just wanted to see what their response was, to see the body language and everything. And it was clear that they were doing that, which, to the stuff you guys talk about, is obviously pretty low level compared to what we know is going on. But back then, that was like kind of a big deal for me in realizing the depth of what's going on. So yeah, that's some fun stories. And yeah, thanks for having me share. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, that's all absolutely fascinating stuff, and it makes perfect sense. Obviously, we've been researching. I mean, Aaron and I. Aaron's not here tonight, by the way. He couldn't make it. He's got some company in town, but he's my co-host, for those who don't know. And we primarily do our channel on YouTube and Rumble. But anyway, we've been researching for years, and I mean, everything that you've said, Jace, aligns with this parallel space program, is what some people call it. And as far as the rocket launches that you were witnessing going up, I've listened to whistleblowers claim that there are no wasted rocket launches, meaning a payload is going up every single time. And whether that's developing out a space station that we don't know about, or literally bringing supplies to moon bases and even Mars bases at this point, and depending on who you talk to, those bases have been established in the 40s, in the 50s at the very least. Our military-industrial complex has colonized space, in my personal opinion, already, and we're kind of getting a very, very slow rollout. Like, they're just, like I mentioned, I've noticed the other day when I was at the gym, there was a special on TV on one of the main programs on Mars, and it was specifically focusing on the Cydonia region and the face and the pyramids on Mars and stuff. And I'm like, why are they showing like this Mars documentary thing on this mainstream channel? It was like Fox or ABC or something. Like, it was on the big screen at the gym. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Like, the next thing they're gonna say is, oh, we found evidence of ancient life on Mars. And, it's part of this narrative, but I fully expect Mars to become part of that narrative. And um, I was going to say something else too, but Jace, you got your hand back up. I'll let you chime back in if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just one more thing I just remembered. So there is this new, or not new, but basically the band Daft Punk. This is going to be funny because it connects to all this. But the band Daft Punk, they had this movie that they released, that they just re-released in theaters yesterday for a one-night special, and we went out and watched it because we're a big fan of the movie. It's called Interstellar 5555. And if you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. There's tons of disclosure in it related to all what we're talking about and more with the music industry and everything too. And just to give you a quick synopsis, because it really connects to what we're talking about, basically in this music video, which is like an hour long, and it correlates with their Discovery album, which had a bunch of their big hits, you know, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and Celebration, and those ones. And basically in the video, what happens is there's aliens on another planet, blue people. It looks like it's probably Sirius or Andromeda or something like that. And a spaceship comes in and basically kidnaps this band that's playing, that like everyone's dancing to. And they kidnap this band and they take them back to Earth in this UFO, and they turn them into human looking beings. So they change their skin color to being, you know, like white, and they put human clothes on them, and then they brainwash them and steal their memories, take their memories and put them on little chips and store them, and turn them into this big touring band that's like now the most popular band in the world. And basically the guy who did it is like this super ancient, like vampire, like kind of semi-immortal type dude who's been on the planet for like hundreds of years. And it's revealed that he's like basically done this with tons and tons of different artists. And basically, you know, it's saying that they brought these aliens here, and it kind of makes me think, hey, is this what Daft Punk is this like them trying to explain, you know, their origin story? And then by the end of the thing, basically they get freed. This guy ends up, you know, dying, the guy who stole them. And they also show during this whole scene where they're bringing them back how like the craft turn into jets, like that this UFO like turns into a jet as it's like about to land on Earth, so it looks like a normal plane, which is kind of connected to everything going on in New Jersey too. And then at the end of the movie, they show that like the master file of their album, which, you know, in the music industry, that's like a big deal. I know you guys have talked about that on your podcast, you know, the masters and how they're kept from the artists, and like they're kind of this occult, like sacred occult keepsake. And what they show is that the memories of these guys are actually behind the master, like they're hidden in the master file, like the original memories of these aliens. And so they basically end up like saving the day and getting back. And then they launch them, the humans, when they realize what's happening, they launch them on a rocket back to space to like their home planet, wherever that is. And it got me thinking, like, I wonder if that's what some of these rocket launches are right now too. Because it just feels like sometimes, like Alexis, my wife, she's often feeling like she's telling me and other people that like she feels like they're sending people into space on these rocket launches, like whether they're ceremonial, like deaths, like for the deep state, for people who have died or whatever. But then when I watch this movie, I'm like, oh my God, like, are they sending some of these kind of beings back home under the guise of rocket launches? And anyways, I recommend checking it out. I think it's for free on YouTube. Interstella with an A at the end, no R, 5555. So yeah.
We just took a long tour into the future, eh?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. So, yeah, Jace, that's actually, you bring up a lot of interesting points, but I do want to let Maureen hop back in. For one, I don't know how long she has with us, and two, I want to make sure everybody knows how to find her and follow her, and you know, her Substack and all that stuff.
Every voice that has spoken has been so rich for all of us, and I thank Fringe and Jace and everybody. Thank you for letting me come back in too. I want to go back to a piece of the story that surfaced just maybe 20 minutes ago. I think it might have been Fringe who was talking about it. Maybe it was Lily, excuse me if I didn't get the right person. But we're talking about the period of time in about 1954, I believe it would have been, during which it seems from several different sources that President Eisenhower was contacted by extraterrestrials and may have concluded some type of agreement with extraterrestrials. It has come to my attention that there is a piece of that story that is circulating, and that it's not in the public domain entirely. It's moving around amongst some privileged persons who know about this, and one of them was a relative of one of the military brass present at that Eisenhower ET summit. And that would have been in some point of 1954. Now, I'm talking about this now because there was an astrologically significant configuration that year. It was transiting Uranus square transiting Neptune. So that's part of the Uranus-Neptune cycle. In that case, it was a waning square, the finishing square of the cycle before the cycle would return to the conjunction in the early 1990s. That's a topic that one could talk about at length and what all it implies. But the main point here, again, is not randomly, but on schedule with astrological occurrences. Now, here's a news flash. Were a person or a group of people or a craft looking either down on our solar system from above or up from below, it would be possible to see these configurations, literally see these configurations I'm talking about. It would even be more evident were a person, a craft, or a group of persons or entities or perceivers to be located above or below planet Earth in space. The farther up or down the point of perception might be, up to a limit, the clearer these arrangements would be. So it would be possible for spacefaring people to literally determine these times of opportune contact by merely looking at the arrangement of our solar system. So how's that for a mind bender? It's just something to think about. I don't know that it is true for a fact that they do that, but I do know that events and situations highly germane and significant to this question of our relationship with the other consciousnesses in the galaxy are in fact related to the precise formation or configuration of astrological arrangements. I know that because I've studied it. I see a hand is up. Tyler, you want to take that? Jadu Chi? I'm going to step out and let that person talk.
Yeah, but I want to let you really quick let people know where they can follow you and find your information, please.
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate that. I have a Substack at the Astrology of World Events, which you can find by a Google search line with entering that information right there, the Astrology of World Events. It's free to read. There are 3 divisions within the Astrology of World Events. One is Alien Astrologer, and it deals with UFO sightings and things of that nature and the astrological correlates. That's one. The other is the Astrology of World Events, and that deals with political developments and earthquakes and all kinds of other things. And finally, the Pagan Astrologer, which deals with the sacred and holy days and the astrological configuration, supporting them for the pagan interest. So you can go there and read any of that for free. You can also reach me on email. I do respond. Starsong1208 at gmail.com. Starsong, STARSONG 1208 at gmail.com. Starsong1208 at gmail.com. And let's see, what else have I got for you? On Facebook, you can find me at Maureen Richmond. I do have a Facebook page there, and I respond on Messenger. How's that, Tyler? Does that work? And I'd be glad to hear from anybody who wants to ask questions or possibly get a consultation or what have you. I'm happy to chat and will be delighted to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing all that. And Jermaine, I'll let you in just a second. I want to chime in on something Jay said a minute ago about potentially launching humans up with some of these SpaceX launches. There's a website called visualcapitalist.com, and it lists all of the world's major spaceports, and there's a lot of them. Most of them we have no idea even exist. And it says specifically here on the website, the world's major spaceports, though the graphic above is a detailed list of many types of rocket launch sites, will focus on major sites that are sending satellites and passengers into suborbit, orbit, and beyond. Now, what is that supposed to mean? Passengers. Who are the passengers? Because as far as we know, they're not sending people up anymore, at least that frequently. So I would argue, I would argue the point that you made, Jace, that they are absolutely sending people up potentially with some of these rockets, these launches that we see. Um, visualcapitalist.com. I recommend everybody go there if you want to look at all the world's spaceports, active spaceports, including galactic spaceports. They're all listed. Most of them are under the guise of active or inactive airports. Nevertheless, there's way more than you might think, and it's all hiding in plain sight. So, I guess let me go ahead and let Jermaine speak. I don't know. I think he left and came back, so I need to let him back in. Okay.
This is gonna be interesting.
Go ahead, Jermaine.
This is historic for the Skull community. The first Etsy. Well, did y'all hear me well?
You're a
Yeah.
little muffled, but yeah.
Oh, that's common. That means I'm getting attacked. Yeah, because we getting attacked. We got knocked out. So if y'all can hear me, I don't know if y'all can hear me because I go to this on my own live. So like I said, I think what this was because I like all the comments y'all been making, and I think the Federation and Lily Nova can say this, and my friend Lorraine, she's a Black Federation and World contactee. They are trying to prove motherfuckers wrong by people who doubt the Federation. That's what I think they doing now. I think this is some desperation of the cabal to try their thing because this is it. After contact, that's fifth dixit, as I know from the Guardian material. So this makes sense. Everything happening is what I've been fighting for a long time when I started on Facebook in 2017. So I'm excited about a lot of stuff. I'm not pessimistic about a lot of stuff. I'm like, I know people are like, oh, they don't trust Federation. I'm like, look, if they sit here having a positive result, they getting this ball moving, you know. And Tyler can tell you how hard we've been fighting to get this shit, dealing with all this shit we've been dealing with. Hell yeah, Federation, go. I'm your fucking cheerleader on this fucking planet. I'll be the first one. Fuck it. That's all I gotta say for now.
All right, perfect. No, I mean it is like you said. It is getting the ball rolling in the global conversation, UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to call them. And I did want to mention Jace's point. People are still laughing. I did want to say something to Jace's point earlier about how they're choosing, to use the word drone right now. It's like they're constantly rebranding it, and that's all part of psychological warfare too. It just further muddies the waters. And Jace also made a great point, or somebody was saying, I think it was Jace. Yeah, these UFOs would come and then when they enter our atmosphere, they would take the form of a jet or an airliner. And when they land, through our visual cortex, they can make it appear as if they are one of our own. But in fact, it's not. It might not be that shape at all. So I wonder if with some of these quote drones that we're seeing, if we're only seeing that shape because that's what's being projected into our consciousness. And I do believe that they have that type of technology. Um, somebody, I think somebody just had their hand up, but it went down. I was going to let him in, but uh, yeah, he just left. Let me let Jace back in here because he somehow left and came back too. But yeah, does anybody, Lily, did you want to chime in on anything that was said, or anybody?
I have one more point.
Yeah, go for
Can
it.
you hear me? I too had, I've got 2 points actually. First point, I agree completely about the use of the word drone. That was one of my first questions when all these reports started coming out of New Jersey. I immediately wondered why they were using the word drone. How do you know that it is a drone? Exactly what are you seeing? Explain it to me, describe it to me. And I still have never really gotten full information on that. I don't know whether we have all agreed to just call them drones because we don't know what they are, or whether they're actually these little propeller-driven things that people are buying out of, Walmarts and what have you, or larger than that. I really don't know. So let's keep asking that question. I agree completely. It may be that word has gotten pasted on this discussion, and it ought not to be there. Absolutely, I agree completely. And secondly, I'd like to add this new point, which is a date to watch for some clarification about what's going on, possibly some amplification about what's going on. And that will be January 1st and 2nd, this coming calendar year, 2025, January 1st and 2nd, when, from the Earth's perspective, Mars will be on one side of the Earth and Pluto on the opposite. We will have an exact Mars-Pluto opposition, and this will bring great focus upon what Pluto in Aquarius signifies. This is important to this entire discussion that we've had tonight, because Aquarius is a sign connected with the notion of cosmic consciousness, with the mental telepathy between beings that exist in any energy space, with thought energy, with the expansion of consciousness to include planetary, solar system, and galactic spaces. Aquarius is natural in that domain. Those are all the things that are associated with the sign of Aquarius. Every single sign in the zodiac has a spectrum of characteristics associated with it, and Aquarius leans in the direction I just described. That's not in the entirety of what Aquarius is about, but it's a big piece of it. It concerns futuristic perspectives, innovations in technology, and specifically the community or connection or fellowship of consciousness in the universe, a friendship, you might call it, of entities in a space. And normally that's friendship that occurs on the face of the earth between human beings, but it's not limited to that. So Pluto's in Aquarius now, and wherever it is by sign, that sign receives tremendous activation, amplification, and intensification, just as it has throughout the decades, as Pluto's been in Leo, like when I was born, Virgo for the next generation, and then in Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, again in Capricorn, where it was during the COVID crisis, and now it's in this new sign, Aquarius, and will be for the next 18 years. So if you want to know what that trend is all about and where this goes, watch carefully the events of the period January 1-2 coming up, and the days around it. So say like 3 days going into that, then those 2 days and 3 days coming off of it. You should get a very good, clear indication of what Pluto in Aquarius is about now and will be continuingly as we move into this 18-year period of Pluto's presence in Aquarius. Thank you so much for letting me add that, Tyler.
I'd like to add something on that. Really interesting. So I hadn't really thought of before. I'm not an astrology person. I don't know very much about that, but it totally makes sense with the uptick of sightings that we're seeing, and how there's an alignment to it. But I was looking back on my notes whenever you were talking about that, that I'm getting through these contact sessions with the Alliance, or some of these cosmic beings. And just a couple of days ago, they mentioned the planet Mercury, and they mentioned like time travel and the alignment. Like there was a specific alignment happening that was right for, I guess, time travel and whatever else is happening. And they said it was also a portal system happening because of the alignment of Mercury and, I guess, astrology. And then right after that, they said January, and they said the storm is upon us, or coming in January. And then I was picking up on solar ray, like the solar energies, the energy from the sun, which you probably know that the energy from the sun is helping to kind of raise the frequency, expand the consciousness, activate our DNA, decalcify the pineal gland, all of that. It's raising the consciousness of the planet. So I found that really interesting how they mentioned the alignment of Mercury and the alignment of what's going on astrologically, and it being a portal system essentially. And then January, big things are coming. They said really good big things are coming, as well as an increase in solar energy. And we're seeing a lot of solar flares coming in right now too. So I just wanted to add that.
Right. Those are some great points, actually. And yeah, January should be interesting for a number of reasons. Jace, I'll let you chime in really quick, and then we will get to Josh Allen after that.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, it's validating to hear you say that, Lily, and Maureen as well earlier, to hear you say that you felt like this was going to be going in a generally positive direction, because I feel that too. It doesn't feel like there's going to be any kind of super cataclysmic event or anything. So that's good to hear. I wanted to chime in on one more thing with Tyler, what you were talking about, and with the drone thing. Like, drone, the word drone is funny because I feel like it infers a piloted, or sorry, a non-piloted craft, which is like way more specific than saying unidentified flying object, which is way more general and vague. So yeah, it's really interesting they're using that word because it's assuming that there's no pilot on board. And then as far as the humans being sent into space, it makes me think of Elon too, and his, kind of official colonization of Mars, and how, we know there's already stuff going on Mars, and humans have been there. But this is kind of, to me, it seems like the official kind of disclosure of it. If he goes there and ends up showing us, hey, look what we found there. But one of the things he said is that the just like with the discovery of America and the people that came over the sea and everything, as much as that history is probably incorrect, but that a lot of people would probably die on the initial colonization of Mars, so that there would be a lot of like kind of sacrifices in the well, he didn't use that word, maybe that's not a good word, but basically that there would be a lot of deaths in the initial setup of this, most likely. And it makes me think that it would be possible and plausible to take people who have done crimes against humanity and kind of give them the option, like, hey, do you want to be put on death row, or do you want to go to Guantanamo Bay, or do you want to be one of the first people to go to Mars and test this mission and set up a base? And for some reason that just rings true to me, like that might end up happening. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Thanks, guys.
Interesting. Send the prisoners off planet. Um, I mean, if that's not already happening in some capacity. Josh, you've had your hand up for a minute. Welcome to the space.
Yeah, I saw these drones are. It's very bizarre what's going on. It's not acceptable that people in legacy media or institutions are saying they don't know what it is, because it's a completely impossible answer that doesn't make any sense, especially in that area. Everyone knows after 9/11, nothing is more monitored than the skies over our major metropolitan areas. So they're just lying. They obviously know what it is. They don't want to tell us. Why they don't want to tell us? Um, that's kind of disturbing to me. I'm also worried. I can't confirm. I don't know if other people confirm if these drones are, or quote unquote drones, are spraying things in the sky. Um, I'm not well versed enough in radioactive material or how it could be deployed, or chemicals and things of that nature, but that's worrisome. So yeah, I just want to make that comment. It's a completely unacceptable answer and completely ridiculous for the government to say that they don't know what it is. Of course they know what it is. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I take that same stance because from understanding our planetary defense system in general, um, through reading books like the Sands of Time series and interviewing whistleblowers and just listening, understanding just military defense in general, they know every single tiny dust particle that enters an airspace when it's not supposed to be there. And like I said, there's the people at the top that are really pulling the strings. That you mean to tell me they don't know? I agree, it's unacceptable, but they're not going to tell us at this point. They, like I said, they've backed themselves into such a corner. They can't just like come out and say what it is because they're telling on themselves at that point. So that's a great point. Thank you for chiming in and saying that. Um, Fringe, go ahead and chime in, and then we'll let Jermaine give us another celebration speech after that.
All right. I'm curious if you, Maureen, had looked at Christmas Eve, the astrology, because we're that Vatican, they're supposed to be opening those 5 portals or whatever. Have you looked at the planets for Christmas Eve?
Maureen, I don't know
Yes,
if you heard that.
yes,
Okay.
I did. I got it. Yes, I put up predictions for the entirety of every sun sign period ahead of time on Astrology of World Events. So you can go there and look what I wrote about that. Look at what I wrote about that period of time, and I put it up a long time ago before any of this had happened. But we can go to that specific period if you would like. And what is happening on that day that is particularly notable astrologically is that the planet Jupiter will be precisely square Saturn. That happens rather infrequently. It's not earth shattering, but it is important. It's Jupiter in Gemini, square Saturn in Pisces. I've got quite a bit of information about what that means up on my Substack, the Astrology of World Events. I'll say briefly here, it's a point of decisiveness, and when it is important to make a determination, a decision, and take action, specifically on seed ideas that were given into the mind of humanity back at the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in late 2020. So that's a big intellectual chunk to take down with all of this. Does it support the notion of the Vatican's supposed business in opening a portal? I really can't say that it does. It's possible that, I can't get very much excitement up about what the Pope does, knowing the history of the Catholic Church as I do. I just don't have a lot of excitement or positive hope for what the officials of that organization do. But there is a major astrological aspect that day, and you could ask the very good question: does that astrological aspect have the effect of opening or creating a portal? That would be a big discussion. We could say that any strong astrological influence can conceivably do that. As a matter of fact, you could make that argument for all of the research that I did on the 300 UFO sightings and their astrological correlates. As a matter of fact, I have hypothesized that myself. I have said apparently these astrological aspects create portals, or what we might think of as portals, or entry points, or signals to outer space for something to occur. And there is one that would be highly visible from the correct perspective on Earth looking down or up, that does become precise on December 24, 2024. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Because there was another date that they went by too, right? Like they're doing it in a pattern. So it just come to my mind about that, because I agree with the Vatican, obviously. But I know that the basilica represents the phallus, and I think about the Osiris and the Isis, and St. Peter's Basilica was built over St. Peter, who was, from what I know, a Draco. So I just think about all that and the symbolism that they've been doing with the Osiris and the X in the chest, and um, cutting up him and if there's, I don't know. I just thought I'd ask, but thank you.
Yeah, they gave us a window that they were going to open these portals, right? And I don't know if they were closing them on Christmas Eve. I think either way, the fact that
I think they're
Maureen made about it.
reopening them. Like I forget what date the first one was, but they're reopening it. Jace might know
Who
his
is the,
name.
who is the they in this discussion, please?
The Vatican is reopening the portal allegedly on Christmas Eve, which would align with Maureen's stance that astrologically it's a very decisive date, and we know that the billionaires of this world are billionaires because they use astrology, and it's not just the billionaires; it's the people that run the world too. So there's no coincidence that they're opening these portals on the date of, I would say, decisiveness, as Maureen would
What
put it.
the fuck kind of drugs are you guys on? And what can I get some?
What's going on out there?
Some good ones.
Who said that?
I don't even know whether the laugh or
I
Um,
myself am mainlining on straight mountain air.
that's all right. He sounded like he was a little inebriated, intoxicated. Um, yeah. So I don't even. I kind of. What were we saying? Oh, the decisiveness date of Christmas Eve, and them opening the portals of Vatican, which is interesting. I believe that's no coincidence. And I guess Jermaine, if you want to hop in, then we'll get to Jace's hand.
Yeah, cause I'm gonna say some stuff. I guess optimistic since I'm a Sagittarius, cause I'm about to go do my own interview in a couple of minutes. But what is going on now? Okay, we know about this law of war because Dave Wilcock been saying this, and also he's been pointing to Shadow Ezra, which is on Twitter or X, they call it now. So a lot of this shit is the movie, and they've been adding scenes to the movie. I don't know if it's the Federation, the Navy, because the cute thing is Navy and Federation. So we've been seeing a lot of movies going on. We don't know what the hell we're looking at. And then out of nowhere, after the hearing, 11/13, after the hearing, oh, we have these drones. And the whole thing, people did not, then of course a lot of normies was watching this. Us and the Scotiamen, we already know what the hell this is. I mean, some of us got friends that are contactees. I mean, what the hell? So I'm like, and then I started looking at the videos on TikTok, and then they upload the videos. These you see all these dormies or whatever the hell we call them now, because they shifting now and they waking the fuck up. So they looking at them and they say, wait a minute, I'm saying 747 moving too goddamn slow, and it's making buzzing noise. Oh hell, fucking no! This ain't no fucking goddamn drone. They lying through their fucking teeth. These are ships. Cause you see them make all these different lights. You see them with double deck lights. Like what the hell is flying with double deck lights inside the SUV with multiple lights? Then you got lights different colors. You got plasma ball. You got orbs flying around it. You got the normies calling the damn plasma orb. Then I was chasing that E-setting fucking drones. Ain't no fucking drones, motherfucker. Those are entities. Okay? Like, they don't know what the fuck going on. So, but anyway, it's a convoluted situation happening. A lot of people are apathetic. A lot of people don't know what the hell going on. They fall in the wrong shit. They're distracted. They don't care. And it looked like either the Earth Alliance Federation, I don't know, Navy, Solar Wharton, they just snuck in UFO disclosure on 11/13. And now it's like they're trying to sneak in step two slash, contact. Like they're trying to sneak it in. Because they literally find fucking ships around there. All other types of phenomena has been happening for months in this year. So it's like like I said, the Federation trying to prove motherfuckers wrong for that the one that don't trust and don't doubt them. They said, look, we gonna get this done. A lot of you motherfuckers on the councils, whatever density you at, you taking too long to deliberate. We trying to get Earth back into fifth density. I don't know what the fuck y'all been doing, and I don't know. I mean, I know I pioneered on Facebook cussing ETs out. And I found out on my live, because I've been dealing with this guy named Nawar, you know, but the motherfucker is legit. Because I just hung out with him recently, seen ships. So I've been sitting here cussing him out. And then on my live, his ETs come through because he channel. And I said, I didn't know when I was cussing the Q group, but I was cussing out ETs. And then he said, that's why we sent him to you. I said, oh, now it make fucking sense. Every time this motherfucker showed up, oh, my whole goddamn conscience is spinning, then I can handle. I'm still trying to figure out shit, since he showed up. But anyway, like I said, we got this law war going on. Biden never been in fucking power. Kamala never been in fucking power. We've been tricked by the Earth Alliance. And what we doing right now is, you see the Q group is doing fucking disclosure. So that's what the fuck is going on, and that's what If you was on my Telegram group, the Conscious War, you would see me all breaking all this shit down and also talking about
Jermaine,
starting
tell
shit.
them about your UFO experience at ESETI.
Oh yeah, I forgot we on X Spaces, so we make history. Okay, so that was, and Tyler was there. What's his name? Rob Counts and Ben Chaston was there, and Edge one. Also, that was in Corey. I'm gonna say that Corey was on the light side, but anyway, um, yeah. So I sit there. You wouldn't believe this. I was sitting there chasing these spheres, these blue spheres that Corey talk about, the blue avian, what is it, spear beetle lab? It's been so long. Yeah, spear beetle labs. Like my friend Siobhan, she's in contact with the blue avians. But anyway, I was chasing them. My friend, his name was Cody. I'm not was, he's still alive. He's in the U.S. Army. And I met him at the mountain, and he was telling me about before all this shit that was happening at East City. But he was behind me. I was chasing this orc. I went around the goddamn trailer. Then a whole fucking ship was in front of me. I said, "What the fuck?" And then I sit there, took the goddamn camera out. I was using the open camera app. I recorded this motherfucker, but when I got to go show Rob count, and Rob was like, "Jermaine, there's nothing up here." I was like, "What the fuck? What do you mean nothing up here?" I know I recorded this. I know how that damn app works. So I found out they deleted my shit. I don't know what ET group deleted. Somebody deleted. I want to find out after contact who the fuck deleted my shit. Because it made me like a fool in front of Rob Kelso as one. But anyway, so the previous days I basically became a UFO hunter. So I ended up one day. It was this light. It was dark nighttime. This light that was coming. I thought it was somebody phone that's approaching me. And then until it got close to me, I looked down. I ain't see no feet, no legs, no body. I said, "What the fuck? Oh shit!" And then I looked behind me with the trees. I can point this out on Google Map. The bush over there on the East City Ranch. Damn, all that five of these damn blue goddamn plasma orbs just floated out. But the weird thing is, I tried to record them on camera, and the camera wasn't seeing nothing but the darkness in the trees like they never was there. So I don't know. I was tripping when they affected my conscience. I don't know what the fuck was going on. But one night I ended up jumping the fence and I was chasing three of these motherfuckers. They were the size of cars. It was a lot of weird shit I had at East City. It was a ghost experience. Like I sit there streamed into the darkness, and I say anybody out there, and I heard these kids laughing, and I said, "What the fuck?" And it sounded creepy like a movie. I mean, it was some weird shit when I went outside the trailer, and the damn grass. Every time I turned my head, it said, and then it stopped immediately. Turn my head. I turned it back. I said, "What the fuck?" It started a ghost experience. Oh, I saw a ship teleport. Oh, I saw all types of shit at East Side. They like that. Whoever the fuck, whatever ET group that was, they threw the whole goddamn bucket on me.
Well,
But
Jermaine,
anyway, hmm
thanks for sharing that, Jermaine.
yeah, I'm about to go. Yeah.
Uh, so, Jace, you got your hand up. I don't know if you can top that, but go
So
ahead and
y'all
go.
have a nice night.
Yeah, you too, Jermaine. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely can't top that, but I'll try. But just to bring it kind of full circle before you start to wrap this up, Tyler, I don't know if you guys mentioned this in the beginning and maybe I missed it, but did you see Trump's official post from his Truth Social about the quote unquote drones?
I did not see the post actually. What did he say?
Okay, I'll read it to you. So it says, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening without our government's knowledge? I don't, without the T, so it doesn't actually say don't, I don't think so. Let the public know and now. Otherwise, shot, not shoot, but shot them down. So there's two misspellings in there. The word don't is missing a T, the word shoot is missing an O, and those two words together would be don't shoot, which is interesting. But then somebody pointed out that, you know how in the Q posts they say basically all the misspellings are comms from Trump, and I guess the one Q post that has the missing O in it, where they put it in a bracket, is drop number 452, and it says enough is enough, and then a string of random numbers and letters, and then it says owls, and then it says good hunting. And what that makes me think of, bringing this back to the whole NRO thing I was talking about earlier, the NRO, I don't know if they still have this as their main slogan, but their big slogan back in the day was "We own the night," and it was a giant owl. And I think even Stephen Greer used to talk about this big old owl. So I don't know if that's connected, but interesting synchronicity if not.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some comms going on there. And I did not see that, Don, Don. It's funny. As soon as you said that, it just reminded me of I just finished reading The Stranger at the Pentagon book. And aside from Valiant Thor being a frequent visitor with our government, the other um, the other contactee, the other ET that was here working with the United States is named Don. And
Whoa, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
yeah, and it specifically says that Don generally accompanies Valiant Thor on his travels within the United States as well as around the world. Um, and it just talks about how, he was making friends with people in LA and Hong Kong, all over the world. Either way, this guy's name was Don. And I never even would have connected those dots, but I literally just finished reading this book last night and remember that. So I don't know if there's a connection, but um, very interesting. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And I'm gonna bring in Kay Holiday. Had his hand up for a minute, and let him chime in.
Hey, brother. It's good meeting you. Um, awesome space, Lily. Good meeting you. Fringe, I know you. Hey, I just wanted to say you guys are awesome, number one. The owl thing. So, the movie from 2009, The Fourth Kind. If anybody's seen that, anybody wants to look a trailer up, it's called The Fourth Kind. It's got Mia Jovovich from Resident Evil. Yeah, she's in all the Resident Evils and stuff. Anyway, and the owl is always the screen image or the screen memory when they get abducted. And this movie was supposed to be based on the true story of like somewhere in Alaska. And there's like four different people, I think, that have these abductions, and they're all the same, and they're all from the same little town. And they would see this owl before they got abducted, and then they would see it after when they were back in their bed or back in their house, wherever they were in their house. It's called The Fourth Kind from, I said, 2009. And then the other one that got me was the one that I posted in your bubble here, which is The Signal from 2014. And it just starts to make you wonder, is like, I'm not going to give the movie away, but if you just watch the trailer or whatever, it's very interesting, has a huge twist at the end. Who doesn't love a twist, right? Lawrence Fishburne and then some younger actors. It was unbelievably well done. And then obviously District 9, I guess. I'm sure you guys in this space have probably seen District 9. Um, just that kind of movie where it makes you just really wonder, like, where the hell we really are, and what is actually happening. When you have the amount of treason that's been perpetrated on America, and then a byproduct to the whole world, right? I mean, you look at Canada, especially Canada, Mexico, anybody that we touch here, and you just look at how much treason has been, put on us in the last 4 years, and nothing has happened. And then the fact that now, obviously Biden is doing all these pardons, and it just feels like no one's in control. Who's at the helm, And I think we all know. You guys talked about the Vatican and some of these things, and I just think it's so out of control at this point. And these drones are just the cherry on top, just total distraction, total divide and conquer. Right out of the book, The Art of War. I bring that up a lot in spaces. People probably get annoyed because I always bring that book up. But it's just all that. It's just all distraction. It's all like, here, flank them to the right, flank them from the back, flank them from the left, right. Now, whatever you can do to divide the people so much that they're so freaking confused at the end of the war that they don't know who they're fighting, you know? And that's exactly where we're at. And I just feel like we're so under attack from every level and every direction that people have just kind of lost their shit. And then you had that Mercury rising or wherever that was. And I remember looking that up a few weeks ago, and it was talking about whatever, certain signs of people and how it's affecting them. And I think this Mercury rising, if you will, whatever you believe in, I feel like it affected everybody. Like, it's not just this sign or this sign. It's like literally everybody's just so out of their mind, and they're just trying to hang on to some level of sanity. And then you go back and look at these movies like The Signal, like District 9. I remember the movie, the original Kingsman. I think that was also from 2014. The original Kingsman, when they emitted that cell phone frequency, and it made everybody in the church go crazy and literally murder each other in the most horrific way you could do it, like gouging eyes, everything. And you just think about 5G, and you think about how all this is obviously connected, right? Like everything is 100% connected, and you know it. You know the truth, and you can pick it up everywhere. You can sense it on people. Um, it's just it's just truly something out of a book. And so the movie The Signal, if you guys get a chance tonight, if anybody has time, to at least look at the trailer, I posted it down there. That movie is really, really eye opening, and it kind of just makes you. It's just thought provoking. And then the last thing I'll say, and I'll get off here, is the show off of FX that ended in 2017, I believe it ended. The Strain. Someone earlier was talking about the Master, and that these super ancient being that's always been here, and that's what the Strain was about. And it had this Master in it, and he could like shape shift and take over different bodies. And then when you're affected with it as like a vampire almost, like when you get infected with whatever this is, the Strain, you change and you become, part of him, and he can see through you then. And it just kind of feels like that's what's happened to a lot of people in this last 4 years or 5 years. And thanks for the time, guys. Appreciate you.
I loved everything that you just said. Thank you so much for sharing. And I wanted to touch on something real quick. I was actually called to picking up, I bought The Art of War years ago. I was called to looking through it the other day, that book, and just to kind of get inside their minds and just see, because this book was written over 2,000 years ago. And I was blown away whenever I opened up the page and it says the art of war is deception. That's it. They've known this for over 2,000 years, almost 2,500 years. The art of war is deception. That's the main thing. So they will do anything they can to deceive and then also turning you against each other, separation and deception. But that's it. And I just did a live stream on this on my YouTube channel actually last Sunday, diving into that. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So also, there was a part, like, I think in the Law of War, it talks about, or the Art of War, as far as like whenever you're weak, whenever you're strong, make your enemy believe that you're weak, and vice versa. Whenever you're close, make them think that you're far. Like, there's all these deceptive tactics and strategies that they use, and that's absolutely what we've been seeing. But it is all deception. And go ahead, Fringe.
I just wanted to go back to what Jace just add a little bit about owls that come up for me recently because I pay attention to patterns. I haven't been on Facebook lately, but I jumped on the yesterday, and one of the guys I know who's an Indigenous warrior in Winnipeg did a live stream, and he shared what they've been going through at camp. They're at this camp called Camp Morgan. They've been there to support the missing and murdered, women and children and stuff like that. So he does boots on the ground in the street, like with a crew, straight up like real warrior for the people. And so he's been at this camp, and they're about to close it. And they're gonna have a sacred fire. They said anybody's welcome if you need prayers or you just want to come sit, whatever. And I forget what date they're going to be closing the camp. They've been going for a year. and like they've had their teepee burnt down. They had all kinds of stuff go on, but a lot of support. And they mentioned, or he mentioned, his name is Trey, but he's got his indigenous name on a lot of his Facebooks because he's like us. He knows about a lot of this stuff too. So um, he said he talked about the beings that they seen there. He talked about the long trench coat man, um, and different things. He said we had our ancestors here to protect us. You know, it was a really powerful video. I like to jump on and catch up every once in a while. But the one thing he mentioned was that the owls were there when he talked about them being protected at the camp, and like kind of like this confirmation from spirit and stuff. But I thought it was interesting that he mentioned the owls because it stood out to me when he said it, and then you just brought it up tonight. And one more thing, and thank you guys for the space tonight. It's been great. Owls in Mi'kmaq here, where I'm from, is called Guguquess. It's spelled with a K, but it's Guguquess. It's owls.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The owl theme is definitely prevalent in ufology. I've seen The Fourth Kind, a movie that he was talking about, Kay Holiday. It's pretty scary. It's definitely, it was one of those movies that had my jaw on the floor when I watched it pre-awakening, but it shattered my reality because I believed what I was seeing. I was like, this is real. Obviously, it's all surrounded in fear in that movie, but the owl imagery shows up in testimonies throughout time, and I definitely believe that there's a connection there. So, thank you, Fringe, for sharing that story. And I guess we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up, guys. We've been going for 2.5 hours now. I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Maureen had to get going, so she went ahead and jumped out. But make sure you go check out her social media and her Substack and all that stuff. She's doing some really amazing work as far as astrology goes, and she is on top of it. She is an expert in her field by definition. So thank you guys all for being here, and until next time, have a great evening.